Morning. Today's daf is daf lamed dalid, and we're up to tana, which is approximately 10 lines down from the top. Mar now is going to raise a kash on the brisa. Tana made kara at the beginning when he was speaking and deriving the din of trua b'shofar, and the trua requires what's called a tekiah lefaneo and a tekiah lachreah, maisila behekesha. He derives this from a hekesh between Yovel and Rosh Hashana. And that hekesh teaches us that we equate Yovel and Rosh Hashana. And this is derived from the pasuk B'chodesh Hashvi, which is superfluous in the parasha of Yovel. And it comes to teach us that all the truos during the course of the month of Tishrei are equal one to the other. Bahashta Maisila B'Gzera Shava. We started with a hekesh, but when we get to the halacha of Shalosh Truos, that halacha we derive from Gzera Shava. So why is it that this din of Shalosh Truos has to be derived from a Gzera Shava? Why not simply derive it from a hekesh? In other words, we have one trua in Yovel, we have two truos written in the parasha of Rosh Hashana, and we're not talking about truos shavos, but we're going to derive from a hekesh that they're equal. So if that be the case, if you could derive it from a hekesh, why do you need a gzeret shava? And the Gemara answers, Hachi Kamar. This is what the tana means to say. Ilav gzeret shava. In truth, if not for the gzeret shava, and we didn't have this a Masorah, a tradition of a Gzeret Shava Mimoshe Misinai, then we could have derived Yovel and Rosh Hashana one from the other, Havi Maisle Bekesha. But Hashda, the Asya, Gzeret Shava, Bekesha Lo Tzarech. Now that we have a Masorah from Moshe Misinai of a Gzeret Shava, we really don't need the Hekesh. And we find also in Masechet Sanhedrin, on Daf Mem Gimel, and in other places that the tana sometimes will mention a derivation that he doesn't need in order to teach us that we could have learned it from there. But the Derive wants to know, so why do we need the Gzeret Shava? Why did Moshe Rabbeinu have to transmit the Gzeret Shava if we could have derived it from a hekesh? That remains a difficult question. Now, in addition to the mitzvah of Tekiah on Rosh Hashana and Yovel, they blew the chatzotzros b'shas masa hamachnos, or b'shas asifas ha'am. This is all derived in Parshas Baloscha from the pasuk uskatem trua v'nosu hamachnos, etc. And tana, the tana of a brisa that we're about to bring, we haven't brought that brisa yet, Maisila b'Gzera Shava midbar. The requirement of a pshuta lefanea and a pshuta lachreah, a tekiah before the trua and a tekiah following the trua, is derived from a Gzera Shava, from the laws of the tekiyos that apply b'shas masa hamachnos b'midbar. So this brisa that we're about to learn does not concede and agree with the brisa that we brought earlier, that we derive this halacha of tekiah lefaneh, tekiah lachreah from the word havara that appears in the parasha of Yovel. And the Gemara is going to explain why havara, according to this brisa that we're about to learn, is not to be interpreted as a tekiah lefaneh. But the drasha, the Gzeret Shava from Yovel to Rosh Hashana, is accepted even by this brisa. The Sanya we learned in the brisa with regard to Masa Hamachnos, the Torah says in Parshas Baloscha Utzkatem Trua. Notice Tekiah and then trua. So it means it's not enough to do a trua. You need a tkiya before the trua. Tkiya b'fnei atzma, utrua b'fnei atzma. How do you know that that's so? How do you know you read it? Utkatem, stop, trua. Ata omer tkiya b'fnei atzma, trua b'fnei atzma, eno el tkiya trua achasi. And the Torah is commanding us to be tokea a trua. And the Brisa answers, Kshu Omer, with regard to the tkiya of asifas ha'am. In other words, we're in Perek Yud of Sefer Bamidbar. Before this, we quoted Pasuk Hey, that's called Uskatem Trua for the purpose of Masa Umachnos. And then we fast forward 5 psukim. We fast forward 2 psukim to Pasuk Zayin. And there, with regard to Asifas Ha'am, the Torah says, Ubahakilas HaKahol, Tisku Velo Sariu, that you blow a tkiya and not a trua. And the implication is that if we go back to Masa Machnos, in contrast to Asifas Ha'am, they did both. They had a tkiya and a trua. So when it comes to Masa Machnos, we need a tkiya and a trua. When it comes to Asifas Ha'am, we need a tkiya. We need a trua without a tkiya. Evi Omer, with regard to Masa Am, tkiya b'fnei atzma, utrua b'fnei atzma. Now again, that only teaches me tkiya before the trua. Minayin shepshuta l'faneha. And okay, so I skipped the step. So we know that there's got to be both a tkiya and a trua. How do we know that the sequence is tkiya first and then trua? Talmud Loma uskatem trua. First tkiya and then trua. So now, minayin shepshuta l'achra. How do you know there's a requirement to add a tkiya after the trua? Talmud Lomar. And here we look at that pasuk that's right between the 2 psukim, and it says trua yiska'u. So the trua comes first, and the tkiya comes after. So we have 2 psukim. We have utkatem trua and trua tisko. Each one teaches me a pshuta, one lefanea and one lachrea. Now the Brisa quotes another source for this halacha of tkiya pshuta liachar trua, when they blew in the midbar. Rabbi Yishmael, Benot Shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka Omer, Einu Tzarech. I don't need to derive the halacha of tkiya lefanea from the pasuk trua to isko. Hareu Omer, I could derive it from the pasuk uskatem trua shenis. And what does that mean? The Torah says utkatem trua shenis v'nosu amachnos hachonim teimona. She'ein tamid lo shenis. The word, that extra word, shenis, is not coming to teach me anything, because if they made a tkiya before the masa, the first masa of those who were encamped, let's say, on the eastern side, then we know that utkatem trua means that you blow a trua before the second masa. Let's, for example, those shvatim that were encamped on the southern side. So that's the tkiya shniya. Why did you have to mention explicitly shenis? The word shenis is redundant. Ma tamalom shenis ze bana av. This is what we call a binyan av, a precedent from which we can generalize to all cases. Trua. Whenever the Torah uses the word trua, tehei tkiya shniya. There'll be a tkiya that's afterward. Shniya means following. And that's the source from which I can derive the pshuta lachrea. So tkatem trua shenis means that there'll be another tkiya shenis following the trua. Now the Brisa continues. Ainli elaba midbar. Now you've proven to me that the tkiya of pshuta lifnei hatrua and another pshuta lachrea is a requirement in the masa amachnos in the midbar. And Rosh Hashana minayin. Talmud Lomar, It says there in the parsha of Masa Machnos, in Parshas Baloscha, trua. In other words, the word trua appears in the Masa Machnos, the word trua appears in Rosh Hashana, l'gzeira shava. Now we have gzeira shava between these two parshas to teach us that even on Rosh Hashana we need a tekiah lifanea and a tekiah lachreah. Now wait a second. In the original brisa that we brought, there was a gzeira shava between Yovel and Rosh Hashana, from which we derived the requirement of 3 truos. Now the brisa has a different gzeira shava, and it doesn't seem to calculate to 3 truos. And therefore, shalosh truos nemru b'Rosh Hashana. We have 2 truos that are mentioned in Rosh Hashana. Number 1, Shabbos on Zichron Trua. Number 2, Yom Trua Yelachem. Then we have a 3rd trua that we derive from Yovel, because we have Gzeira Shava between Rosh Hashana and Yovel, Bavarta Shofar Trua. And we have on Rosh Hashana a Gzeira Shava of Shvi Shvi, as we mentioned yesterday. Ushtei Tkios L'chol Achas V'Achas. Each one of these 3 truos requires a Tkiel L'fanea and a Tkiel Achreah. And this is what we derive from Midbar. Is Matzino L'meidim Shalosh Truos V'Sheish Tkios Never Rosh Hashana. The final calculation now is that we require 3 truos, each one with the Tkiel L'fanea, Tkiel Achreah, calculating 9. However, says the brisa, they're not all equal. Until now, we understood that each one of the 9 blasts was doraisa. Now the brisa says no. Shtayim midivrei Torah v'achas midivrei sofer. 2 are doraisa, 1, the 3rd is doraisa. Why? Shabbos on Zichron Trua is the pasuk in Rosh Hashana. And we have Havarta Shofar Trua in Yovel, and we have Gzeira Shava between Yovel and Rosh Hashana, Shvi Shvi. These are Midivrei Torah, so we have 2 truos Midivrei Torah. However, Yom Trua Yelachem, I can't use that to derive a 3rd trua. The 3rd trua is only Midivrei Sofer. Why? Because that pasuk Yom Trua Yelachem I need for a drasha. We'll see in a minute that the blowing of the shofar has to take place by day and not by night. L'talmudo huba. In order to teach me a certain din in the tkiyos, and we have a gzeira shava of trua from Midbar, as we saw at the beginning of this brisa. So if we're going to derive a 3rd chiyuv trua, then it will not be panui, as we say, it will not be redundant or extra for the gzeira shava. So it must be that the Chachamim made a takana establishing an obligation of a 3rd trua in order to fulfill the Malchus Zichronos Shofros. And now we have another shita that not only is one of the 3 truos derabanan, but 2 out of the truos are derabanan. Rab Shmuel bar Nachmeni Omar Rab Yonasan. Trua achas midivrei Torah is only 1 midivrei Torah. Shtayim midivrei sofer. From the pasuk of Havarta kol shofar trua, Havarta shofar trua, which is in Yovel, we're going to derive 1 trua midivrei Torah. However, the psukim that are written in the Parsha of Rosh Hashana, namely, Shabbos on Zichron Trua, Yom Trua Yelachem, L'Talmudo Oba, I need to derive dinim from these 2 psukim, and therefore I don't have them free to derive the chiyuv trua of the 2nd and the 3rd. The Chachamim made a takana to add 2 truos in order to fulfill Malchus, Zichronos, and Shofars. My Talmudu Ba, the Gemara now analyzes what do we try to derive from these psukim, Shabbos Zichron Trua, Yom Trua Yelachem. Biboile, I need it, liyom bayom v'lo b'layla, to teach me that Tekiah Shofar Rosh Hashanah must take place by day and not night. The Idach, what about the other tana who derives from Yom Trua, a Gzeira Shava from Midbar, Yom Trua here, Yom Trua Midbar, and from the pasuk Zichron Trua, we derive the second Trua, the Oraisa, is by Yom V'lo B'layla Minole. He doesn't have the pasuk of Yom Trua free to derive the exclusion of Laila. How does he know this? Nafkamina, Nafkale, he derives it from the pasuk of yomaki tavir shofar, and in Tkiyas Yovel on Yom Kippur, the Torah requires Yom, and from then we have the Shvi Gzeira Shabbat to Rosh Hashanah, that on Rosh Hashanah likewise we only blow during the day and not at night. So the Gemara asks the following kasha: Mibiyom Kippurim Yolev is Nigmar Nami Mine Lipshuta Lefanea Upshuta Lachrea. Why is it that you require a Gzeira Shava to Masa Bamidbar to derive Pshuta Lefanea Pshuta Lachrea? Why not derive from Yom Kippurim? You already established an equation, analogy between Yom Kippurim and Rosh Hashanah, from whence you derive the exclusion of Laila. Why not go a step further and in the framework of that analogy and that equation between Rosh Hashanah and Yovel, derive the conclusion that you need a Pshuta Lefanea and a Pshuta Lachrea? And this was derived in the parsha of Shofar of Yovel from the pasuk of Avarta Shofar and Taviru Shofar. So why do you need a Gzeira Shava from Midbar to Rosh Hashanah, the Gzeira Shava trua, from which you derive the Pshuta Lefanea of Pshuta Lachrea? And even Rabbi Yonasan, even according to his shita, that you derive a Gzeira Shava from Yovel to Rosh Hashanah, and they from that Gzeira Shava you derive a Chiv Trua Achas V'Derei Torah, and the other two are D'Rabbanan. Why can't you learn the din of Pshuta Lefanea, Pshuta Lachrea from this Gzeira Shava to Yovel? You're using the Gzeira Shava to derive one trua. Why don't you use the Gzeira Shava to a Vavarta to teach me Lefanea and Lachrea? And the answer is that Tanakama and Rabbi Yonasan did not derive anything from the word Vavarta, because Vavarta Taviru lo mashmale. They didn't understand that this teaches you anything about Tkios Pshutos. And therefore they need the Gzeira Shava from Midbar, from Masal Machnos, in order to establish Tkio Lefanea and Tkio Lachrea. So the Gemara now asks the following question. According to what you're telling me about their shita, that they don't darshan the pasuk Vaviru and Taviru for the requirement of Pshuta Lefanea Pshuta Lachrea, Elamai Darshibe, what do they derive from this pasuk Vavarta? And the Gemara answers, Vavarta Kid Rav Masna, Tiyama Rav Masna Vavarta Derech Havaroso. It teaches me that you have to blow the shofar the same way the shofar grows naturally from the head of the animal. And you have the smaller opening on this side, the wider opening on the other side, and you have to be mavir the kol from the narrow to the wide. And not only that, but Taviru, because we have two psukim here, we have one Avarta, and now we have another pasuk Taviru. That teaches me the Komer Achmona Navre Biad. It means that if not for the extra pasuk of Taviru, I would have thought that maybe the Torah is only requiring you to hold on to the shofar and to take it from one place to the other without blowing it. And that itself would be the simon that we declare Yovel. But since the Torah says Taviru, and there's an extra redundant word Taviru, we're going to derive the interpretation of Taviru as Lashmiya, not enough to carry the shofar, but you have to blow the shofar. Ve'idach, again, we go back to the original brisa that derives from Va'avarta and Taviru, the law of Pshuta Lefaneh, Pshuta Lachreo. Then the Gemara wants to know, how do we derive, therefore, the halacha of Shofar Derech Gidulo? And also, how do we derive the halacha that you have to be mashmiya bokol? It's not enough that you carry the shofar in your hand from place to place. And the Gemara answers that as far as the din of Rav Masna is concerned, that he has to blow the shofar b'derech gidulo, midashani midibure. He shouldn't have said the word taviru. He should have said the word tkiya. It could have said vitiska b'shofar trua. Why does he use the lashon havara? And the answer is that we're going to derive two different conclusions from havara. Number one, that you need a tkiya pshuta lefanea and a tkiya pshuta lachrea. And we're going to derive the conclusion that the shofar has to be blown b'derech gidulo. And that which we derive from taviru, that it's not enough to carry it biyad, this tana, doesn't require such a drasha. Why? Taviru biyad lo motzes amrit. Why? The Gomar avara mi Moshe. We're going to derive Gzeira Shava from Moshe in order to teach me that it's not enough to carry the shofar, you got to blow the shofar. And what is that Gzeira Shava? Ksiv hacha, in the parsha of Yovel, it says Vavarta shofar trua. And the emphasis on the word havara. Uksiv hasam, with regard to Moshe Rabbeinu collecting all the contributions for the Mishkan, it says Vayitzav Moshe vayaviru kol b'machane. That was the greatest fundraising campaign in history. Moshe had to blow a sound to tell the people, okay, we have enough. Don't bring any more gifts. Is mala halon b'kol. It says Vayitzav Moshe vayaviru kol b'machne. That means he blew the sound. Is afkan here too in Yovel, when it says the same word haviru, it means b'kol. Now, how does the second brisa derive the conclusion that the tkiya has to be b'shofar? Ulahai tana d'maisile midbar. When they gathered together the people for the masa in the midbar, it wasn't with a shofar. Maybe on Rosh Hashana we should be blowing trumpets and not a shofar. How do we know that we should derive from Yovel that we blow a shofar? Maybe we should derive from midbar that we should blow chatzotzos. And the Gemara answers, Talmud Lomar, that's why the pasuk teaches me with regard to Tkiya b'shofar, Tiku b'chodesh shofar, b'kesel yom chagenu. Unbelievable. The Gemara is stretching its arm out all the way to Tehillim to derive the conclusion that the instrument that you blow on Rosh Hashana is not a chatzotra, but rather a shofar. And how do we know this pasuk refers to Rosh Hashana? Because it says, b'kesel yom chagenu, Ezu chag, Shachodesh miskasevo bekesa, that the levana is covered, is concealed. Havyomer zeh Rosh Hashana, which is the only holiday that we have at the beginning of a month. Ukamar Achmana tiku b'chodesh shofar. And we learn from this that the mitzvah of Tkiya b'Rosh Hashana is with a shofar. Now, at this point, we have the famous takana of Rabbi Avo B'Kisri in Caesarea. You may remember that we had two interpretations of the Aramaic translation of Onkelos for the word trua, meaning yevava. It was either those very short notes, da, 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 or they were a little bit longer. It's called enuche anche. So given that suffix, that we don't know exactly what the trua is, Iskin Rabbi Avo B'Kisri Tkiya Shlosha Shvarim Trua. Tkiya. This is called Tashrat, which means that we have to blow both a trua, the short blast of Yavava, and as well shvarim, which are enuche manchile, which are longer size. The Gemara says, wait a second. Mimonefshach. Well, what is this takana of Rabbi Avo? It's very difficult. If he holds that a trua is yilala, which means yivavos, and that's really the sheet of the tana of our Mishnah back on Daf Lamed Gimel Amid days. So therefore, le'evet tkiya trua tkiya. All we need is a tarat. There's no need to add a shvarim. If he holds that you need a shvarim, is liave tkiya shlosha shvarim utkiya. We don't need yivavos. So it should be the yivavos or shvarim. And he answers Masafkale. Rabbi Avo did not know what is the precise, exact, correct translation of the word trua, meaning yivava, or is it genuche ganech? And therefore, since it's Masafkale genuche ganech or yuliyolil, therefore he required that we do both. So we have tashrat, and in the tashrat we have both shvarim and trua, and that's how we cover our bases. But maskiv lo ravavia, v'dil yilule havi, v'kam mafsik, shlosha shvarim bein trua l'tkiya. We have a problem of a hefsek here. If you're going to blow a tashrat, and you assume, which is one side in the suffix of Rabbi Avo, that we're talking about Yivava, and that's called Yilule Yolil, then if he blows a shvarim, that's going to be a hefsek between the tkiya and the trua. So the Gemara answers the hadar of it tkiya true tkiya. He's going to have to blow a tarat, leaving out the shvarim, because the shvarim might possibly be a hefsek. But wait a second. You still haven't covered your bases. Why? Because if you hold genuche ganich and you need shvarim, the longer notes, then the trua becomes a hefsek between the shvarim and the tkiya lachreah. Maskif lo Ravina. Again, I don't know why Rav Avira couldn't ask both questions, but anyway, Maskif lo Ravina. Dilma genuche ganich v'kamafsik trua bein shvarim l'tkiya. And he answers the hadar of it tkiya shvarim tkiya tashat. So the Gemara says, "My Rabbi Avo, my hiskin." What exactly was the takana of Rabbi Avo in the tkiya of the shvarim and the trua together? We said that Rabbi Avo instituted tashrat. Why do we need tashrat? If you do a tashat and a tarat, then you've covered all your bases. And the Gemara answers, that perhaps trua in the Torah means both genicha and yalola. And you start with the genicha and then you go to yalola. So we don't know really whether it's genuche ganach and then yilule yolil, maybe it's yilule yolil and then genuche. So in addition to tashrat, you would have to have a tkiya, trua, shvarim tkiya, which we don't have. Tkiya, trua, shlosha shvarim utkiya. Just 1 second here. Why does he have so he wants to put the trua before the shvarim. So in other words, in addition to tkiya, shvarim, trua, tkiya, we should have to require tkiya, trua, shvarim, tkiya. So when I answer Stone of the Milsa, it's pashut, and this is the derech ha'olam ki mitra be'inish milsa. If something never bad happens to a person and it causes him to cry, is bereisha ganich. At the beginning is goneach kedichos aruchos. The acher weekend and only afterwards v'yalel yololos ktsaros. Therefore, if the trua is genichos and yololos, then we have to start with Genichos, which are the Shvarim, and then go on to the Alolos, which are the Trua. So let's just summarize this last sugya. According to the strict letter of the law, the Chiv on Rosh Hashana is to blow 9 kolos, Shalosh Truos, with a Tekiel Lefanen and Tekiel Achref for all Truos. Again, we have machlokes whether all 3 are Doraisa, whether 2 out of the 3 are Doraisa, 1 out of the 3 is Doraisa. Now we blow Shalosh Truos, I'll say there Hatfila. 1 Shalosh Truos is for Malchias, the other for Zichronos, and the third for Shofars. And since we have a suffix, what the trua of the Torah is, whether it's Shvarim or whether it's trua, therefore we have to be Yotzei all possibilities, and therefore Rabbi Avo made the takana. And it turns out that according to the calculation of Rabbi Avo's takana, we end up with 30 kolos. The Mishnah says, Taka b'rishono mashach b'shniya kishtayim ein v'yodu ala achas. Even if he had extended a tekiah and it has a shear of 2 tekiyos, but since he blew it as 1 long blast, it counts only as 1 tekiah. Amar Rabbi Yochanan.